We won. Jasmine made the last shot with seconds left and everybody completely lost their minds. She paused. I almost called you, but it was late. You can always call me, even at midnight, especially at midnight. He could hear her smiling through the phone. Coach said if we win the next one, we go to regionals. The whole school is going crazy about it. You going to the game? Obviously. Jasmine would never forgive me. A beat. You're not going to make it back for it, are you? I'll try, baby. You always say that. I always mean it. He said sometimes the road has other ideas. She accepted that the way she always did, not entirely happy about it, but understanding. She had grown up watching him leave and come back, with the patient rhythm of someone who had learned early that loving a trucker meant getting comfortable with distance. They talked for a while after that, the easy, unhurried kind of talking that didn't need a reason. Layla described the history chapter she was struggling through, something about the civil rights movement that she actually found interesting but couldn't make herself memorize properly. Garrett listened and then carefully, quietly, started telling her things that weren't in the textbook, things he knew from his own grandmother, things passed down like furniture carried from one generation to the next. Layla went quiet and listened. That happened sometimes. This particular stillness she got when she realized her father knew something nobody had thought to write down. Why don't they put that part in the book? She asked. Because somebody decided what went in the book, Garrett said simply. A pause. That's kind of messed up. Yes, it is. She laughed softly. Then, Daddy, are you okay? You sound, I don't know, different. He kept his voice easy. Long night. I'm fine. Okay? She didn't fully believe him. She never fully believed him when he said fine, but she let it sit. I'm going back to studying. Good. Drink some water. Don't stay up too late. It's already... Then don't stay up past... Deal. A smile in her voice. Love you, Daddy. Love you, baby. Lock the doors. I always lock the doors. The call ended, and Garrett drove in comfortable silence, the cab warm with the echo of her voice, the particular kind of peace that only his daughter's laugh could put in him. He thought about the history chapter. He thought about the basketball game. He thought about trying to make it back in time. He drove like that for some time. His phone rang. The number on the console display was Gloria's. Garrett frowned and answered. Gloria. She didn't say hello. Her voice was stripped down to just the necessary words. The voice of a woman holding herself together by will alone. He came back. Silas Hargrove himself. This morning, just after dawn, had 6 men with him. He knew about your rig, the color, the make, asked me questions. I didn't tell him anything, Garrett. I swear I didn't. I know you didn't, Garrett said. What did he say? A pause. He could hear her breathing. He left a message. Her voice dropped. He said, Tell the fat man we know about his daughter. Tell him Layla is a pretty name. The highway stretched out ahead of Blue Thunder, long and dark and empty. Garrett said nothing. Garrett didn't pull back onto the highway. He sat with both hands on the wheel and the engine idling, and Gloria's words hanging in the cab like smoke. The hazard lights clicked on automatically when he'd stopped. Orange light pulsing across the dark asphalt in front of him, steady and rhythmic. He let some time pass, not from shock. Garrett Callaway did not shock easily. He sat still because stillness was how he thought, and right now thinking clearly was the only thing that mattered. He went through it methodically. What he knew, what he didn't know, what needed to happen next. Silas Hargrove had Layla's name. That meant he had more than her name. A man like Silas, careful, methodical, running a criminal operation across 4 counties for years without a serious legal challenge, did not throw names around as empty theater. If he knew Layla's name, he knew where she went to school. He knew her routine. He knew enough. Garrett reached for his phone. He dialed Layla's number and listened to it ring, his jaw set, his breathing slow and controlled. She picked up on the third ring, her voice groggy now, the studying having finally lost the battle with sleep. "Daddy, is everything okay?" "Hey, baby." He kept his voice exactly the same as it had been earlier. Warm, easy. "Sorry to call back so soon. Change of plans on this end. I need you to do something for me." "What?" "Slightly more awake now. You remember your friend Sienna? The one on Prescott Street?" "Yeah, of course." "I need you to stay at her place instead of home. Pack a bag and go straight there. Don't go back to the house until I call you." A pause, longer than he wanted. "Daddy, what's going on?" "Nothing for you to worry about," he said. "I just need to know you're not home alone for a few nights. Can you call Sienna? She won't mind." "But Layla," his voice stayed gentle, but it carried the particular weight that told her clearly and without argument that this was not a discussion. "Call Sienna. Don't go home alone. Can you do that for me?" Another pause. He could hear her working through it, weighing the urge to push against the thing in his voice that she had learned over 16 years to take seriously. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I can do that." "Good girl. Get some sleep. I'll call you." He ended the call and sat for a moment with the phone in his hand. Then he scrolled to a contact that had no name attached to it, just two initials, VO, a number he had not dialed in years. He looked at it for a moment. He pressed call. It rang twice. "Garrett." The voice that answered was deep and unhurried, with the faint trace of an accent worn smooth by decades of American living. Damon Norris had been many things over the course of his life. He was currently the owner of a private security and intelligence firm operating out of Atlanta. More importantly, he had once been the man covering Garrett's left side on operations in places that didn't make the news. He asked no unnecessary questions. That had always been one of his best qualities. "Damon," Garrett said, "I need information on a criminal organization, white supremacist biker gang. Name is the Iron Covenant, operating out of Harlan County, Tennessee. Leader goes by Silas Hargrove. They've threatened my daughter." A brief silence. "How deep do you need it?" Damon asked. "Everything," Garrett said. "Members, operations, finances, political cover, law enforcement connections, everything you can find. Give me some time. I'll be in Knoxville soon. Call me when you have something." "Garrett?" Damon's voice dropped a register just slightly. "How bad is it?" Garrett looked out through the windshield at the empty Tennessee highway stretching away into the dark. He thought about Troy and his 3 friends in the parking lot. He thought about Silas Hargrove showing up at Gloria's diner with 6 men. He thought about the way those words had sounded in Gloria's voice. "Tell him Layla is a pretty name." "I don't know yet," Garrett said. "That's why I need the information." He ended the call, clicked off the hazard lights, put Blue Thunder in gear. The highway opened up ahead of him, and Garrett drove east toward Knoxville, steady and silent in the dark. Already thinking 3 moves ahead, Garrett delivered his load to a distribution warehouse on the eastern edge of Knoxville. He backed Blue Thunder into the receiving dock with the mechanical precision of a man who had done it thousands of times, climbed down, signed the paperwork, and exchanged a few words with the dock supervisor. Then he pulled the rig to the far end of the truck stop lot across the street, cut the engine, and waited. He ate a sandwich from the cooler behind his seat. He drank coffee from his thermos. He watched the lot fill up and thin out as the day moved through its hours. Drivers came and went. Nobody paid him any attention. A big man in a cobalt truck parked and quiet. He called Layla. She was between classes, her voice bright and distracted the way it got when the school hallway was loud around her. She confirmed she was going to Sienna's. She asked if everything was okay. He said yes. She said okay, in the tone that meant she still didn't entirely believe him, but she trusted him enough to let it go. He told her he'd call that evening. He meant it. Damon called. "Talk to me," Garrett said. Damon talked without stopping. Garrett listened to every word without interrupting once. The Iron Covenant was not a biker gang. That was the first and most important thing Damon established. It had the appearance of one, the vests, the patches, the motorcycles, the rural Tennessee territory. But underneath the surface, it was a functioning criminal enterprise, structured and deliberate, with income streams and a hierarchy and long-term strategic thinking behind every move it made. 63 active members across 4 counties. Leadership concentrated in Harlan County under Silas Hargrove, with regional captains overseeing operations in the surrounding areas. The extortion corridor along the interstate had been running for years. In that time, 11 independent truckers had been driven off the route permanently, some by violence, some by sustained intimidation, some by having their loads stolen until continuing simply wasn't financially viable. Not one successful prosecution, not one conviction. The organization's financial backbone was a company called Harlan Freight Solutions, a legitimate trucking dispatch business that the Covenant had absorbed through a campaign of threats and property destruction against the original owner, a 61-year-old man named Gerald Pitts, who had sold at a catastrophic loss just to make it stop. Through Harlan Freight, extortion proceeds were laundered alongside legitimate dispatch revenue and fed into 3 other businesses: a car wash, a storage facility, and a small construction company. All of them clean on paper. All of them owned by men connected to Silas Hargrove by blood or loyalty. County Commissioner Reed Gandler sat on the Harlan County Budget and Oversight Committee and had been receiving payments from the Covenant for years. His influence kept the county sheriff's office politically neutered, underfunded, understaffed, and acutely aware that certain investigations were not going to be rewarded. The FBI had noticed. An organized crime task force agent out of the Memphis field office, Agent Lena Thorson, had been building a RICO case. She was smart and aggressive, and she had at one point a credible cooperating witness, a former mid-level Covenant member named Terry Chavez, who had been willing to testify about the financial structure of the organization. Weeks ago, Terry Chavez disappeared. No body, no trace. The case stalled. Silas Hargrove, Damon said, former Tennessee Department of Corrections prison guard for years at Riverbend Maximum Security, terminated after a brutality investigation, inmate injuries that were documented but never fully prosecuted. He spent years building the Covenant after that. He is not impulsive. He does not make mistakes out of ego. Every move this organization makes has been calculated well in advance. A pause. Garrett, these are not the 4 men in the parking lot. I know, Garrett said. There are 63 of them. I heard you the first time. Damon was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? Garrett looked out through the windshield at the dark lot. A light rain had started, tapping softly against the cab roof. Somewhere across the lot, a rig was idling, its running lights burning amber and red in the wet dark. He thought about Mateo Ruiz sleeping in his cab. He thought about Gloria's shaking hands. He thought about Layla packing a bag and not knowing why. I don't know yet, Garrett said, but I'm going to figure it out. Morning came gray and cold over Knoxville. Garrett was back on the interstate, but he wasn't making time. He wasn't running freight. He had called his dispatcher and pushed his next pickup back. Personal matter, he'd said, and left it at that. He had the corridor to himself, and he intended to use it. He drove west, back toward Harlan, back the way he'd come. But this time he stopped everywhere. Every independent truck stop, every fuel station still run by a family name instead of a corporate logo, every diner with a gravel lot and hand-painted hours on the door. He pulled Blue Thunder in slowly, parked, went inside, ordered coffee, and listened. When the timing felt right, he asked quiet questions. He didn't explain who he was or what he was doing. He just asked, and he listened to what came back. What came back was bad. At a fuel stop, he found Mateo Ruiz. The young man was in his cab, not sleeping, just sitting, engine off, staring out the windshield at a concrete wall. Garrett knocked on the passenger window. Mateo startled, then recognized him and unlocked the door. "You're still here," Garrett said. "I made my delivery." He looked worse than he had before. Paler, with the hollowed-out look of a man running on no sleep and too much fear. "I should go home. My wife's been calling." He paused. "I just keep thinking about what they said, that it doesn't matter where I go, that they'll find me if I come back through. Do you drive this corridor regular?" "Every couple weeks. Same route. I've been doing it for years." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I don't know what I'm going to do." Garrett sat with that for a moment. "You're going home today. Your wife needs you home." He held Mateo's eyes until the younger man nodded. "I'm working on the rest of it." He left Mateo's cab and kept moving. He found Earl Hudson at a truck stop. A big, weathered white man of 61 with broad shoulders gone soft, and a face that had the permanent squint of someone who had spent decades reading the road. He was sitting at the counter of a roadside diner nursing black coffee, his rig parked outside with a load he hadn't picked up yet. He had no particular reason to be sitting there. He just wasn't ready to go back on the corridor. Garrett sat next to him. They talked the way truckers talk, slow and indirect at first, circling the real subject. Earl got there eventually. Some time ago, the Iron Covenant had stopped his rig on a lonely stretch and taken the entire load, $40,000 in consumer electronics. Earl had been hauling it on contract for a mid-size retailer. The contract had a loss clause that put the liability on the driver when law enforcement couldn't recover the cargo. Earl ate the full loss. His wife Meredith had been diagnosed with breast cancer some time ago. The treatment costs were manageable barely when Earl was working steady. After the load theft, they were not manageable at all. "I filed the report," Earl said. He wasn't angry when he said it. He was past angry. He had moved into the flat, exhausted country on the other side of it. Deputy took the statement, never heard another word. "Commissioner's office told me there was an active investigation when I called. That was weeks ago." He turned his coffee cup slowly in both hands. "Meredith's next round of treatment is coming up. I don't know how we're covering it." Garrett didn't say anything for a moment. Then he quietly asked Earl for his fuel stop preference and paid the man's tab and parking without drawing any attention to the act. Earl looked at the receipt the cashier slid back to him. He looked at Garrett. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know," Garrett said. By the end of that period, Garrett had spoken with 9 drivers. 9 separate accounts of robbery, intimidation, assault, and extortion along the same stretch of highway. Most were too frightened to file formal statements. Some had tried. None of it had mattered. That night, parked in the rest area, Garrett called Damon. "I have first-hand accounts from 9 drivers. The actual number affected is closer to 11, maybe more." Damon was quiet for a moment. "What are you planning to do with all of it?" Garrett looked out at the dark tree line beyond the rest area lights. "I'm still deciding," he said. Garrett pulled Blue Thunder back into Holland Fuel Stop. The breakfast crowd, such as it was, had already thinned out. 2 older men in work jackets shared a booth by the window, talking about nothing in particular. A single driver sat at the counter with his back to the door. Gloria was behind the register, and when she saw Garrett come through the door, her whole body visibly relaxed, the way a person does when they've been waiting on something without admitting they were waiting. She poured his coffee before he sat down. He ate eggs and toast and let the diner settle around him. When the 2 men in the booth paid their tab and left, Gloria came around the counter and sat across from Garrett. She kept her voice low out of habit, even though there was nobody close enough to hear. "There's something I should have given you before," she said. She reached into the front pocket of her apron and set a business card on the table between them. White card, federal government seal, clean black type, Special Agent Lena Thorson, FBI, Organized Crime Task Force, Memphis Field Office. She came through here some time ago, Gloria said. Sat right where you're sitting, ordered coffee, asked quiet questions. Careful woman. Didn't say much about what she was building, but she was building something. Gloria tapped the card once with one finger. I didn't give her much. I was scared. Still am. She paused. But you're not. Garrett picked up the card and looked at it. He sat with it for some time after Gloria went back to work, turning it over, thinking through what Damon had told him about the stalled investigation, the disappeared witness, the months of work that had gone nowhere, an FBI agent who wanted Silas Hargrove badly enough to drive into Harlan County and sit in a diner asking quiet questions was an agent who had run out of easier options. That meant she might be willing to work with what he had. He stepped outside to the parking lot and made the call. Thorson answered on the second ring. Her voice was crisp and professional and immediately sharply alert the moment Garrett said the words Iron Covenant. Whatever she had been doing before he called, she stopped doing it. Who is this? She said. Someone with current intelligence on the Covenant's operations along the interstate. Patrol routes, extortion schedule, 2 laundering transactions in the last 30 days. He paused. I want to meet. A brief silence. He could hear her thinking, assessing, weighing, deciding. When? She said. Today. Somewhere between here and Memphis. Neutral ground. They agreed on a truck stop diner in Jackson, Tennessee. Anonymous enough, busy enough that 2 people having a quiet conversation at a corner table wouldn't attract any attention. Garrett drove straight there. He arrived first, took a table in the back corner, ordered coffee, and waited. Thorson walked in some time later. She was in her early 40s, medium height, with dark hair pulled back, and the kind of face that gave nothing away without deciding to. She wore civilian clothes, jeans, a dark jacket, but she moved through the diner like a person accustomed to reading rooms. She spotted Garrett immediately and came directly to the table without any pretense of looking around. She sat down, put nothing on the table, and looked at him with clear, measuring eyes. You're not a federal informant, she said. It wasn't a question. Number. Law enforcement. Former military. Which branch? Navy. She studied him for another moment. What do you want out of this? The same thing you want, Garrett said. Silas Hargrove in federal custody and his organization dismantled. And if I ask why? They threatened my daughter, Garrett said simply. Something shifted in Thorson's expression. Not softness exactly, but a recalibration. She leaned forward slightly. Tell me what you have, Garrett told her. He laid it out cleanly and in order. The patrol routes he had personally observed, the extortion schedule Mateo and the other drivers had described, the specific timing and location of 2 cash transactions he had traced to front businesses in the Harlan Freight Network through Damon's intelligence. He gave her names, dates, and license plate numbers from memory. By the time he finished, Thorson was sitting very still. How long did it take you to gather this? She said. Days. She looked at him steadily. My team has been working this case for months. I know, Garrett said. She absorbed that without reacting to it. Then I want to continue sharing intelligence. Regular contact. Agreed, Garrett said. But all contact goes through your personal cell, not your office line, not your official channels. He held her eyes. Personal cell only. She frowned slightly. Why? Garrett kept his expression neutral. He had his reasons. He wasn't ready to share them yet. Not until he was more certain. Call it caution, he said. Thorson looked at him for a long moment. Then she took out a pen, wrote a number on a paper napkin, and slid it across the table. Personal cell, she said. They parted in the parking lot some time later. Garrett stood at Blue Thunder's door and watched Thorson's dark sedan pull out onto the highway and disappear west toward Memphis. He stood there for a long moment after her taillights faded. The Jackson truck stop hummed around him. Diesel engines, distant CB chatter, the ordinary sounds of the road. He got in the cab. He sat with both hands in his lap and stared at the windshield. Something about the meeting had gone well. He knew that. Something about it also sat slightly wrong in a way he couldn't fully name yet. He put Blue Thunder in gear and headed back east. Some time passed without incident. Garrett ran a short freight haul out of Nashville, a routine load, partly to keep money coming in and partly to give himself legitimate reason to be moving through the corridor. He checked in with Layla each evening. She was settled at Sienna's, annoyed about the history test she felt she'd underperformed on, and asking with increasing frequency when she could go back home. He told her soon. He meant it as a promise, not a comfort. He and Thorson exchanged brief calls, operational details, nothing sensitive. She confirmed she was cross-referencing his intelligence with existing case files. She sounded focused and encouraged. Garrett told her nothing about Damon. He told her nothing about the financial records he and Damon had begun discussing as a potential next move. He kept the calls short. Something still sat wrong. He just hadn't found the shape of it yet. He found it at dusk on the road. He was westbound on the interstate, the sun dropping fast behind the tree line and painting the highway in long amber shadows. He was thinking about Earl Hudson and whether the victim restitution process through the FBI would move fast enough to matter for Meredith's treatment schedule. That's when the black pickup appeared in his mirrors. It came up fast from the right lane, too fast, too deliberate, and settled in tight behind Blue Thunder. Garrett checked his speed. He was running in the zone. The pickup had no reason to be that close. He watched it without changing anything about how he was driving. Then a second pickup came up the left lane and matched his speed exactly, boxing him in from the side. Ahead, a third vehicle, another black pickup, same model, sat on the shoulder of the next on-ramp with his flashers off, engine running. As Garrett approached, it pulled forward and drifted to the center of the right lane. Boxed from behind, boxed from the left, slowed from the front. Garrett brought Blue Thunder to a stop on the highway shoulder with calm, unhurried movements. He set the brake. He kept both hands visible on the wheel. 4 men got out of the vehicles. Not Troy's crew, not the same faces from the fuel stop. These were senior men, older, calmer. The one who approached Garrett's window moved with the measured authority of someone several rungs up the Covenant's hierarchy. He wore no expression worth reading. Garrett rolled the window down. The man looked up at him without speaking for a moment. Then Silas wanted you to hear this directly. Some days ago, you met with a federal agent at a diner in Jackson. Table in the back corner. You talked for some time. You gave her patrol routes, transaction locations, and 3 names. He let that sit. Silas had a full summary of the conversation by that afternoon. Garrett said nothing. He kept his face still. He's not angry, the man continued. He wants you to understand something. The reach of this organization extends further than you've calculated for. He paused. He also wanted you to know he respects what you did to those 4 men in the parking lot. He doesn't hold grudges about it. He holds information. There's a difference. He looked at Garrett steadily. He's watching what you decide to do next. The man walked back to his truck. The 3 vehicles pulled away in an unhurried convoy and were gone around a curve in the road. Garrett sat on the shoulder for a long time. He played it back with precision. Every detail of the Jackson meeting, the time, the location, the content of what he'd shared. Thorson had not told anyone they were meeting. He certainly hadn't. The summary had reached Silas within hours of the conversation ending, which meant someone inside Thorson's field office had been watching her contacts and movements and reporting back in near real time. The FBI's Organized Crime Task Force had a leak, A paid leak. Almost certainly, someone who had been on Silas's payroll long enough to be the reason the investigation had stalled and a cooperating witness had vanished. Every piece of intelligence Garrett had given Thorson was now compromised. Every approach that ran through official channels was compromised. The entire FBI route, the clean, legitimate, by-the-book path to bringing Silas down, was a door with Silas standing on the other side of it. He called Damon. The meeting with Thorson, Garrett said. Silas had a full summary within hours. Someone inside her office is feeding him her contact list in real time. Damon was quiet. That changes the entire approach. Yes, Garrett said. It does. He looked out at the empty highway. The last of the daylight was gone now. Just a dark road and the distant glow of an overpass. Damon, he said, I need a new plan. Garrett spent the next period off the road entirely. He parked Blue Thunder at a commercial lot and worked from the cab, phone calls, satellite maps on Damon's secure line, long stretches of silence while he thought through angles and contingencies. He checked in with Layla each evening. She was restless at Sienna's, bored with sleeping on a couch, increasingly frustrated with the open-ended nature of the arrangement. She had a basketball game she didn't want to miss. She had a life she wanted to get back to. Soon, Garrett told her each time. He meant it more urgently than she knew. Damon called with something specific. The Covenant's extortion operation generated significant physical evidence, stolen goods, cash records, documentation of payments. That material had to be stored somewhere. Damon's intelligence pointed to a converted warehouse on a rural property south of Harland, a former grain storage facility now surrounded by chain-link fencing with 2 exterior access points and a dedicated records office in the northwest corner of the building. The financial documentation stored there covered years of the Covenant's full operation. Ledgers, transaction logs, payment records connecting the front businesses to the laundering pipeline, names, dates, amounts. Damon had obtained a detailed layout from commercial satellite imaging. He walked Garrett through it on the phone with the calm precision of a man who had planned this type of operation many times before in considerably less forgiving environments. 2 guards on exterior rotation. They switch. The overlap point when the rotation crosses on the south side gives you a window on the northwest approach. Records office has a standard commercial deadbolt, nothing sophisticated. Cameras? Garrett asked. 2 fixed positions, no pan, both covering the main entrance. A pause. They're not expecting someone who knows what they're doing. Nobody ever is, Garrett said. He went in that night. The window opened. Garrett moved through it with everything his body still remembered from a life he had technically left behind. Low and quiet along the fence line, the guard's footsteps fading south. The northwest wall is dark and still. He had the deadbolt open, a skill that required no explanation and left no evidence. Inside, he used a pen light no wider than his thumb. The records office was exactly where Damon said it would be. 3 filing cabinets, 1 locked document box, and a desktop computer with an external hard drive already connected to it. Garrett worked quickly and methodically, photographing ledger pages, copying files onto a drive he'd brought, checking each document against Damon's list of priority targets. He was thorough without being slow. He was back outside and moving along the fence line toward the tree cover where he'd left his vehicle. Clean, quiet, no disturbance. He called Damon from the car. I'm out. Full copy of the financial records. Damon reviewed what Garrett had transmitted. His assessment was unambiguous. The records documented multi-state money laundering operations connecting Silas Hargrove and 7 senior Covenant members to wire fraud, extortion, and organized criminal enterprise. Federal RICO violations across 3 states. 40 years of exposure, minimum for Silas alone. This is everything, Damon said. This ends them. For the first time in days, Garrett slept. An unknown number called. Garrett was awake. He was always awake early, sitting in the parking lot of a roadside diner with a cup of coffee going cold in his hand. He looked at the number. He didn't recognize it. He answered anyway. "Good morning." The voice was calm, almost pleasant, unhurried in the particular way of a man who believed completely and without question that he controlled everything happening around him. "You're better than I thought you were. I want you to know I mean that as a genuine compliment. Silas Hargrove." "The warehouse was a test," Silas continued. "I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. Now I do. While you were inside my building, I had men watching a young girl's movements in your city. She left her friend's apartment to go pick up some things from home. My men picked her up off the street. She's fine. She's going to stay fine. That part is entirely up to you." Garrett's hand tightened around the phone. "Here are my terms," Silas said. "Every copy of those financial records, every copy destroyed or surrendered to my people by sundown today. Your phone wiped, you leave Tennessee, and you don't come back." His voice stayed pleasant throughout. "Or your daughter won't come home." The call ended. Garrett stared at the phone in his hand. Then he called Damon. "Silas just called. He said he's claiming his men picked Layla up off the street this morning." A sharp silence. Where was she supposed to be? Sienna's. She must have gone back home for something. Garrett was already pulling up Layla's contact on his screen. "I'm calling her now." He dialed. It rang. Voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail again. "She's not picking up," Garrett said. "Could be sleeping," Damon said immediately. "Could be in the shower. Could be her phone died." His voice was measured. The voice of a man actively constructing alternative explanations. "Garrett, this is exactly the kind of move a man like Silas makes when he wants to shut you down fast. You just took something valuable from him. He's scared of those records. This could be a bluff designed to make you hand them back without him having to do anything." Garrett called Sienna's number. Sienna answered groggy. "Is Layla there?" Garrett said. A rustling sound. A pause that lasted too long. She was. "I woke up and she was gone. She left a note saying she was going to grab some clothes from home and she'd be back before school." Garrett ended the call. "She left Sienna's. He told Damon she went home alone. She's not answering her phone." He paused. "Still think it's a bluff?" Damon was quiet for a moment. "Call the home line." Garrett called the house landline. It rang. Nobody answered. He sat in the parking lot of that ordinary roadside diner with the ordinary morning moving around him and felt something shift in his chest. A cold and specific kind of dread that doesn't announce itself loudly, but simply arrives and settles in and refuses to leave. "Damon." His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Not a call, a message. He opened it. 2 attachments. He opened the first one, a photograph. Layla, in the gray hoodie she'd been wearing in her last Instagram post days ago, sitting in a wooden chair in a dim room with no windows. Her hands were zip-tied in her lap. Her face was turned slightly toward the camera, eyes wide, jaw set with the particular kind of frightened dignity that made something crack open behind Garrett's sternum. She was alive. She was unharmed. She was terrified. He opened the second attachment. A video, seconds long, Layla looking directly into the camera, reading from something off-screen in a flat, controlled voice. "Daddy, please do what they say. Please just do what they say." Then the video ended. Garrett sat without moving for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet and so completely controlled that it was almost frightening in its steadiness. "Damon, I see it." He was already on the line. Garrett had never ended the call. His voice had changed. The measured alternatives were gone. "Garrett, I'm sorry. Don't," Garrett said. He looked at the photograph one more time, his daughter's face, her hands bound in her lap, the hoodie she'd picked because it was warm and comfortable, and she hadn't known she needed to be anywhere except home. "Get me everything," Garrett said. "Every location, every face, every patrol route at that compound, every exit, every guard rotation." He paused. "All of it. Now." Damon's voice came back quietly and firmly, the voice of a man who had followed Garrett into dark places before and was prepared to do it again. "Give me some time." "You've got it," Garrett said. He put the phone down and looked out through the windshield. The diner behind him hummed with the ordinary sounds of an ordinary day. Coffee being poured, a door swinging open, someone laughing at something that didn't matter at all. Men at that compound. He knew. He didn't care. Garrett sat in the parking lot with the phone face down on the passenger seat and both hands resting in his lap. The morning moved around him. Trucks pulling in and out, a family loading into a minivan, a cashier sweeping the sidewalk in front of the diner entrance. None of it touched him. He was somewhere else entirely. He was in the quiet space he had learned to find a long time ago in circumstances where falling apart was not an available option. A place behind the noise, behind the fear, behind the image of his daughter's face in that photograph where everything became very simple and very clear. He thought for some time without moving. Then he picked up the phone. The first call was to Deputy Burke Lockwood. Lockwood answered with the careful weariness of a man who had learned to approach unknown numbers with caution. When he heard Garrett's voice, he went quiet. Not hostile, just watchful. "I need some time of your time," Garrett said. "Not as a deputy, as a man." A pause. "Go ahead." Garrett laid it out in plain, sequential order. Commissioner Reed Gandler, payments from the Covenant for years documented in financial records Garrett now possessed. The FBI's organized crime case stalled not by lack of evidence, but by a paid source inside the Memphis field office, feeding Silas Hargrove information about active contacts and informants. The disappeared witness, Terry Chavez. Victimized drivers, most too frightened to file formal statements whose accounts Garrett had gathered personally. He gave Lockwood names, dates, and specific figures from the financial records, enough that no reasonable man could dismiss what he was hearing as speculation. Lockwood didn't interrupt once. "The records are going to a federal judge in Nashville before noon today," Garrett said. "Outside local jurisdiction. Outside the compromised field office. Once they arrive, this moves at a federal level, and nothing Silas Hargrove owns in this county can slow it down." He paused. "I'm not asking you to cross your line, Burke. I know where your line is, and I respect it. I'm asking you to be on the right side of it when the smoke clears, because it is going to clear today." A long silence. Garrett could hear Lockwood breathing slowly on the other end. A man working through something heavy in real time. "My wife would tell me I've been on the wrong side of it for some time already," Lockwood said quietly. "What do you say?" Garrett asked. Another silence, shorter this time. "What do you need?" Garrett told him. The second call was to Agent Thorson, not through her official line, but through the personal cell number Damon had sourced independently through channels that had nothing to do with the FBI's internal directory. She answered with immediate suspicion. "Who is this? How did you get—" "Listen to me carefully," Garrett said. "You have a source inside your field office. Someone who has been on Silas Hargrove's payroll long enough to be the reason your witness disappeared. Every contact you log, every informant you develop, every meeting you take. Silas has a summary within hours." Dead silence. "I met with you in Jackson some days ago," Garrett continued. "Silas had a full account of our conversation by that afternoon. He told me himself." He paused. "I'm not telling you this to burn the case. I'm telling you because I've already worked around it. He told her about the financial records, years of the Covenant's full operation, copied from the warehouse. He told her he had mailed a complete copy that morning to Federal Judge Patricia Harmon in Nashville, a judge with a documented record of prosecuting RICO cases and zero connection to Silas's network in Harlan County. The records were already in transit, already beyond Silas's reach. Thorson was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was stripped of everything except focus. I need those records through official. You'll have them, Garrett said. Through Judge Harmon today. Be ready to move when she calls your office. He ended the call. The third call was to Silas. Garrett dialed the number from the morning's unknown call. It rang twice. I wasn't sure you'd call back, Silas said. The pleasantness was still there, smooth and unhurried. I'm coming to the compound, Garrett said. Alone. No records, no phone backup, no federal contacts. Just me coming to bring my daughter home. You give me your word, she's unharmed, and this ends tonight. A pause. Then Silas's voice came back warm with satisfaction. The sound of a man who believed fully and finally that he had broken something. Come on then, Silas said. We'll be waiting. Garrett ended the call. He put Blue Thunder in gear. The access road to the Covenant's compound was miles of cracked county blacktop that narrowed gradually as it pushed deeper into the rural, dark tree line pressing in from both sides. No streetlights, no houses, nothing but the occasional reflective marker post catching Blue Thunder's headlights and throwing them back. Garrett drove it at a steady pace. No reason to rush, no reason to hide. He had called Damon one final time before leaving. Damon confirmed his position, a ridge northeast of the compound perimeter with line of sight to the external generator housing he had accessed during a daylight reconnaissance earlier. Damon had what he needed. He was ready. Garrett had told him, wait for the rig to stop, then give me some time. Damon had said, come back out, Garrett. Garrett hadn't answered that. He'd just ended the call and driven. The compound appeared through the trees. It sat on what had once been a working farm, a main farmhouse, 2-story, wood framed with a covered porch running the full front length, 4 outbuildings arranged in a loose arc behind it, a gravel yard connecting everything, worn bare by years of vehicle traffic, chain link perimeter fencing running the full property boundary, 8 feet high, topped with 2 strands of wire. A single gate on the access roadside, wide enough for a truck. The last of the day's light was going fast. The brief amber window when everything looks soft and the shadows run long and the compound's exterior flood lamps had already clicked on, washing the yard in flat white light. Garrett counted men visible from the road before he even reached the gate. 2 on the porch, 2 in the yard, more positioned at intervals along the fence line, all of them watching the access road, all of them watching him come. He drove Blue Thunder straight up to the gate and stopped. The gate was closed. A padlocked chain held it shut. Garrett set the brake. He did not get out. He positioned Blue Thunder's nose close to the gate, close enough that opening it would require moving the truck, and moving the truck required him. He killed the headlights, but left the engine running. Then he sat. From the farmhouse porch, Silas Hargrove watched. He stood with both hands resting on the porch rail, relaxed, composed, flanked on his left by another, and on his right by 2 senior Covenant men. He looked at the rig sitting at his gate and said something to the man beside him. The man nodded and signaled toward the yard. 2 Covenant members walked toward the gate. Garrett watched them come through the windshield. He watched the porch. He watched the fence line. He tracked every position simultaneously, the way he had been trained to do in environments considerably more dangerous than a Tennessee farm at dusk. He checked the clock on the dash. The two men at the gate were close now, close enough that Garrett could see their faces. Irritated, impatient, used to people being afraid of what they represented. The compound went dark. Every flood lamp, every exterior light, the farmhouse windows, the security lamp above the barn door, all of it gone in a single instant, as completely and suddenly as if someone had simply switched the world off. The gravel yard disappeared. The fence line disappeared. The two men at the gate froze in the abrupt blackness. From the porch came shouting. Silas's voice, sharp, controlled, cutting through the confusion with the efficiency of a man who understood immediately that this was not a power failure. Garrett was already out of the cab. He came down the passenger side, away from the gate, away from the two confused men, and moved along the compound's exterior fence line with his back low and his footsteps silent on the dead grass. He had the layout memorized to the foot. Main farmhouse, north end of property. Outbuilding 1, large vehicle storage. Outbuilding 2, large equipment. Outbuilding 3, small northwest corner. That was the one. Damon's intelligence had been specific. Single exterior lock, no interior guard, ground level window on the south wall. Behind him, the compound yard erupted in flashlight beams and shouted instructions, men colliding with their own disorganization. Silas's voice trying to impose order on chaos that was moving too fast for order to catch. Garrett reached the third outbuilding. He pressed his back against the wall and listened. From inside, faint, barely audible, over the noise in the yard, the sound of someone breathing fast and trying very hard to stay quiet. Garrett put his mouth close to the wall. "Layla," he said, barely above a whisper. The breathing stopped. Then, "Daddy." The south wall window was exactly where Damon said it would be. Garrett found it by touch, a single pane frame, older than the fencing around it. The latch corroded enough that it gave with steady upward pressure and no sound worth worrying about. He had it open. He went through it sideways, lowering himself to the floor with the controlled care of a big man who understood that silence was worth more than speed right now. Inside, the outbuilding smelled like motor oil and cold concrete. No windows on the other 3 walls. No light source at all. Pure black. "Layla," he said quietly, "talk to me here." Her voice came from his left, tight and controlled, the way her voice got when she was scared, but refusing to let the scared win. He had heard that particular quality in her voice exactly once before, when she was younger and fell off her bicycle and broke her wrist. And she had looked up at him from the ground with tears running down her face and said, "I'm okay, Daddy." Before he even reached her, he moved toward her voice. His hand found her shoulder first. He crouched in front of her and ran his palms quickly and efficiently over the situation. Zip ties at the wrists, hands bound in her lap, ankles tied to the chair legs with what felt like nylon rope. He checked her face with his fingertips, the way a blind man reads. Forehead, jaw, the bridge of her nose, no swelling, no cuts, no dried blood. He exhaled once, just once. "You hurt anywhere?" he said. "No." "A beat." "I'm so scared, Daddy." "I know, baby. That's okay. Being scared is okay." He was already working the zip tie at her wrist with a folding knife, cutting outward from the skin. One controlled stroke. "In about some time, you're not going to be here anymore. I need you to focus on that." The zip tie came apart. He moved to her ankles. "Can you walk?" he said. "Yes." "Fast?" "Yes." Firmer this time. He could feel her pulling herself together vertebra by vertebra, the way the Callaways did it. He cut the last rope and stood and took her hand. "Stay close, stay low. Don't speak unless I ask you something." "Okay." "Okay," he said. The south window again. Garrett out first, then reaching back and guiding Layla through with both hands at her waist, taking her weight as she came over the sill. Outside, the compound yard was still churning with flashlight beams and shouted orders. Silas had reorganized faster than Garrett would have preferred. He could hear the search pattern beginning to tighten, men moving outward from the main yard toward the outbuildings. They had limited time. Garrett put Layla directly behind him and moved along the rear wall of the outbuilding away from the yard toward the back fence line. He had prescored a section of the chain link during a brief reconnaissance. 3 vertical cuts low to the ground, invisible unless you were looking for them. He found it in the dark by counting fence posts from the northwest corner. He pressed the section inward, and it folded back without resistance. "Through here," he said. "Head down." Layla went through without hesitating. Garrett followed. On the other side of the fence, the tree line began back. Dense cedar and scrub pine that swallowed the darkness completely. Garrett and Layla moved into it, and the compound's noise fell away behind them, muffled by distance and wood. A dirt access trail ran parallel to the back fence. Damon had identified it on the satellite map. Garrett had walked it himself. Deputy Burke Lockwood's personal truck sat on that trail with the engine off and the lights off. The passenger door opened as they approached. Lockwood leaned across from the driver's seat. A big weathered man with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and an expression that was equal parts relief and resolve. Behind him, through the rear window, Garrett could make out 2 vehicles further back on the trail, state trooper units dark waiting. Layla climbed in without being told. Lockwood reached back and put a hand briefly on her shoulder, the instinctive gesture of a grandfather, which is what he was, and she let him. Garrett stood at the open passenger door. He looked at his daughter, her face pale in the darkness, her hands still marked at the wrists where the zip ties had been. She was looking back at him with an expression he recognized. It was the same expression her mother used to give him at airport departures, the one that said, "Come back," without saying anything at all. "Go with Burke," Garrett said. "Don't get out of this truck for any reason. I'll call you when it's done." "Daddy." "Layla." She held his eyes for one more second, then she nodded. Lockwood met Garrett's gaze over the roof of the cab. Something passed between them, not words, just a mutual understanding of 2 men who both knew what came next. Lockwood gave a single nod. "She's safe," Lockwood said. "Go." Garrett stepped back from the truck. Lockwood pulled the door shut quietly, started the engine low, and rolled down the trail without lights. Garrett watched the truck disappear into the tree line. Then he turned around. Behind him, through the trees and chain-link fence, the Covenant's compound blazed with flashlights and furious, disorganized voices. Silas's men were discovering the empty chair. They were discovering the cut fence. They were beginning, slowly, and with dawning comprehension, to understand what was happening. Garrett rolled his neck once and walked back toward the fence. Garrett came back through the fence the same way he'd left. He pressed the pre-scored section inward, moved through low, and straightened on the other side. The compound yard was ahead, a chaos of crossing flashlight beams and men shouting over each other, the search pattern pulling outward toward the outbuildings. Someone had found the empty chair. He could tell by the shift in the shouting, the way it went from urgent to furious. Garrett stepped out of the tree line and walked directly into the yard. He didn't run. Running was panic, and panic was noise, and noise was other people's terms. He moved through the dark spaces between the flashlight beams the way he had been trained to move, deliberate, low, using the confusion itself as cover. Men passed near him without seeing him. Another turned at the wrong moment. Garrett put him down quietly and kept moving. The next man came out from behind the vehicle's storage barn with a flashlight swinging wide. The beam caught Garrett across the chest for a moment. Long enough. The man opened his mouth. Garrett closed the distance and removed the option of making noise. The flashlight hit the gravel. Garrett caught it before it bounced. He clicked it off and set it down. Another found him near the back of the main barn. Garrett heard him first, the particular footfall of a very large man moving fast and angry, not trying to be quiet because he had never needed to be quiet in his life. The collision was immediate and total, two large bodies meeting at speed in the dark, and for a moment it was simply a matter of who absorbed it better. They were almost the same size. That surprised him. Most things surprised him eventually. What followed was not clean. It was not clinical. It was the kind of fight that happens between two big men who both know how to take damage. Grinding and close and brutally physical, with no room for technique and no room for anything except endurance and will. The man drove Garrett back into the barn wall hard enough to knock the wind out of him. Garrett felt his left shoulder wrench against the wood and fire traveled down his arm. He bit down on it and kept his feet. He got his right forearm under the man's chin and pushed, creating space, which was all he needed. Short, targeted strikes to the same spot on the man's left side. Ribs. Garrett felt something give. The man made a sound low in his chest and his arm dropped. Garrett took the opening. The man went down against the barn wall and stayed there, shoulder dislocated, breathing in the ragged, shallow pulls of a man with damaged ribs. He was not getting up. Garrett straightened, pressed his right hand briefly against his own shoulder, and felt the deep, grinding ache of something not fully right. He rolled it once. It moved good enough. He had a cut above his left eye from somewhere. He hadn't felt it happen. Blood was running warm and steady into his eyebrow. He wiped it with the back of his hand and kept moving. The farmhouse door was unlocked. Silas was inside, alone, standing in the middle of the front room, with a lamp burning on the table beside him and a pistol resting in his hand, barrel toward the floor. He looked up when Garrett walked in. He didn't raise the gun. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The composed facade was still there, just barely, like paint over a cracked wall, holding its shape through pure habit. But beneath it, visible now in the set of his jaw and the slight tightness around his eyes, was something smaller, something that had not been there when he had been so completely certain of everything. "You sent them away," Silas said. It wasn't a question. "She's gone," Garrett said. Silas absorbed that. His jaw tightened further. "This isn't over. The covenant is bigger than this compound, bigger than tonight. You cannot." "Silas." Garrett's voice was quiet, almost gentle. He looked at the financial records drive visible in Silas's breast pocket. "The copy recovered from the warehouse. That one's a copy anyway." Silas looked down at it. From the access road, faint at first, then rapidly growing, came the sound of multiple vehicles moving fast, engines, tires on gravel, the particular cadence of a federal convoy that was not slowing down. Silas looked in at the door, then back at Garrett, and finally, completely, he understood. Silas Hargrove was taken into federal custody on the compound's gravel drive. Garrett stood on the farmhouse porch and watched it happen. Agent Thorson's task force moved through the compound with the organized efficiency of people who had been waiting a long time to do exactly this. Federal agents, state troopers, radio calls overlapping in the cold evening air, Covenant members coming out of outbuildings with their hands up, some defiant, most just tired. The particular exhaustion of men whose bluster has finally run out of road. Silas walked to the federal vehicle without being dragged. He kept his chin level and his eyes forward and his face composed right up until the moment the door closed behind him. Garrett watched the whole thing from the porch without moving. He had a dish towel pressed against the cut above his eye, and his left shoulder was going to need attention, and he did not care about either of those things right now. Thorson came to him last. She looked at the dish towel. She looked at his shoulder. She looked at the general condition of him and said nothing about any of it. John Erickson, she said, forensic accountant, Memphis field office, employee. Her voice was flat and controlled, the voice of a woman managing something she was furious about. We arrested him at his home. He's already asking for a deal. Will he get one? Garrett said. Not the one he wants. She paused. Commissioner Gandler was detained. Silas's senior members are being processed at federal facilities. She looked at him steadily. The financial records you sent to Judge Harmon, the federal prosecutor called them the cleanest RICO documentation he's seen in years. Garrett nodded once. Thorson was quiet for a moment. You want to tell me how a truck driver pulled off what my task force couldn't do in months? I had a good map, Garrett said. She almost smiled. Almost. Your daughter is with Deputy Lockwood. She's asking for you. Garrett handed her the dish towel and walked off the porch. Weeks later, the Covenant collapsed the way large criminal organizations collapse when their leadership is gone, and their financial records are in federal hands, quickly and from the inside out. Plea agreements were offered and accepted. Members scattered across 4 counties went quiet. Harlan Freight Solutions was seized and shuttered. The car wash, the storage facility, and the construction company followed within days. The corridor along the interstate that had belonged to the Iron Covenant became almost overnight just a road again. Mateo Ruiz received a formal settlement from Harlan County following Deputy Lockwood's testimony before a federal oversight panel. It was more than he'd lost. He called Garrett to say thank you and didn't have the words, and Garrett told him the words weren't necessary. Earl Hudson received victim restitution that covered Meredith's remaining cancer treatments and then some. Earl sent Garrett a handwritten letter on notebook paper that said only she starts her last round next. Thank you for giving me the ability to be there. Garrett folded the letter and put it in the visor above the driver's seat, where he kept the things worth keeping. Gloria Holland was featured in a regional newspaper story about the collapse of the Covenant's extortion network. The reporter called her the heart of the resistance on the interstate corridor. Gloria thought that was a bit much. She framed the article anyway and hung it beside the register right next to the hand-lettered sign that had been there since 1987. Layla went back to school on a Monday morning. She told exactly 2 people what had happened. Sienna and her history teacher, Miss Patterson, who noticed the marks on her wrists and asked quietly after class. Layla was back at practice by the next day. She did not miss the game. Garrett made sure of that. He sat in the 3rd row of the bleachers at Layla's high school gymnasium on a Friday night, still moving carefully on account of his shoulder, wearing a clean jacket and holding a paper cup of concession stand hot chocolate that tasted mostly like cardboard and didn't matter at all. The gym was loud and warm and packed. Parents and students and teachers crammed onto wooden bleachers that groaned under the combined weight of everyone who had shown up. The cheerleaders were at full volume. The buzzer sounded every few minutes. Sneakers squeaked on the hardwood and the scoreboard's lights blinked. And somewhere behind Garrett, 2 fathers were arguing about a foul call with the intensity of men who had nothing more important to do that night. Garrett thought that was just about the finest thing he had ever heard. Number 14 on the court was Layla Callaway. Fast and precise and completely absorbed in the game, moving like someone who had made a decision to put fear behind her and keep living forward. She didn't know exactly where her father was sitting. She hadn't seen him come in. Then she did. She was bringing the ball up the court when she spotted him. 3rd row, big man in a clean jacket, a paper cup in one hand, and the quietest smile she had ever seen on his face. She almost broke stride. She caught herself. But for just a half second, her whole face changed. She gave him one small nod. He gave her one back. Garrett settled back against the bleachers and watched his daughter play. He thought about her mother, how she would have been here right beside him, probably louder than both of them combined, probably on her feet by now, regardless of what the scoreboard said. He felt that absence the way he always felt it, not as a wound anymore, but as a shape, a presence defined by its outline. He had learned to carry it. He held his cardboard hot chocolate and watched Layla move across that court, alive and whole and entirely herself, and felt something settle in his chest that had not been settled in a very long time. The last shot was seconds left. The gym lost its mind. Garrett stood up with everyone else and clapped until his good shoulder ached, grinning in the noise and the light like a man who had earned exactly this moment and intended to feel every second of it. Early the next morning, before the sun was fully up, Garrett loaded Blue Thunder and drove south out of Nashville on empty roads. He thought about a letter folded in his visor. He thought about a newspaper article hanging on a diner wall. He thought about a man named Silas Hargrove sitting in a federal holding facility with years of consequences ahead of him. He thought about a girl in a number 14 jersey hitting her stride on a hardwood floor and the way she had looked at him from across that gym. Her whole face saying everything that needed to be said. Garrett pointed Blue Thunder south into the pale morning and drove, carrying nothing heavy anymore. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support the channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.